Welcome to ToneTalks. 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 As we start off, I just want to make sure that we all tune in to Dash Talk, Dash Radio app, get Dash Talk going, and essentially let's move the discussion forward. Just this week, what I was able to do with Matt Bruenig was I was able to do an article, and I want to again give a thanks to Matt for allowing me to do that piece with him. I've had a chance to interview Sandy Darity, Thomas Shapiro, a number of the top economists. So when you hear me talk about wealth data, these aren't opinions. This is the real data. And so like me and Matt were able to do an article together this week that showed some abysmal numbers when it comes to black millionaires. And I think that for a lot of us, what we've created is a psyche based on nothing that's real. When I say that, I mean, we think that there's some black millionaires and there's some white millionaires. If I try hard, I can be one too. What I'm here to tell you is that the numbers don't reflect that. What I'm here to tell you is that the numbers actually show that there's only 380,000 black millionaires in America today out of 20 million families. The middle black family, when you take out the car, the couch, and everything else, might be below $2,000, $3,000. Without the car, they're worth less than $4,000. This is where we're at today. While at the same time, there's over 13 million white American families that are worth more than $1 million, 15% of their race. What that means is so much of the opportunity that we see in our own lives doesn't necessarily reflect in our pocketbooks. And we got to ask the question, what are we going to do about that? What is going to be our political outlook? How are we going to move the ball forward? I hope to have Yvette Carnell address some of those facts as we move forward. We got Zoe Williams just slid up in here, you know. But I also want to make sure that you yourself, you make sure you look at this data. If you have any questions, go question the data and go look it up yourself. I want to empower people to empower themselves as we move forward in this discussion. You know, Matt did another great article that I'll talk to him about in a second as well, and that was about how the black economy cratered under Obama, other than for the top 2%, the top 2% of black families. So the rest of black families did worse, other than the top 2%. And everybody else suffered under President Barack Obama. This is just the economic data. And we have to question how that happened, why that happened, and how we move forward. So, you know, as we have this dialogue, let's make sure that we keep everything above board, stay honest, make sure that we have this discussion from a good, solid place. The other thing that I want to kind of get to with Matt is this general analysis that moves beyond just African Americans, but looks at blacks and whites together. It looks at the reality that not all whites are doing well. A good chunk of whites actually are suffering as well. The bottom half of America is largely losing its place. There isn't this growing middle class anymore. How do we combine with each other and actually demand more from the economy? I'm going to check in and make sure that Matt is all checked in. I want to make sure that everybody has the call-in number for this room. Let me make sure and give that to you right now. That's 323-879-4445. We're going to start taking calls in about an hour or so from now. Between that, my guests are going to call in, and we're going to have this dialogue and make sure that you guys are able to get a good discussion. Once they've talked, you'll be able to call back in, ask me about what they said so that you can get a better understanding of where America's wealth stands at. You know, I did an animated video on my ToneTalks, and what it showed is, as of 2013, the middle black family was worth $1,700. That's not enough to actually be American. The question becomes, how do we demand more from politics, more from government, more from ourselves so that we can get more out of the community? Checking in 1 second. So as we move forward, what I want to do right now is really just take a chance to say thank you to everybody that tuned in today, because I know it's late on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, you know, it's 7 o'clock, everybody's getting home, but we're gonna have to have this dialogue, consistently, and we're gonna have to build a step at a time to actually move this thing forward. Matt is gonna be calling in 1 second, and then we'll start with him, and then we'll move through some of the guests. So we want to take a break right now, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the inaugural show of Tone Talks. My man Antonio Moore, we setting him up right now. Tone, today's topic, and you guests are calling in right now. Today's topic is centering around exactly what you have, a unique angle when it comes to the gap between the races and money, and that how it trickled down, the trickle down effect on our relationships. I need to know, because I got a lot of people who are listening to you who just heard me get off the air. You know, a lot of people are listening for answers. They want to know how they build relationships around the current economic issues that are presenting themselves. Tone?
Hold on 1 second.
Go ahead, Tone. You on the air, man.
Yeah, this is Antonio Moore. Essentially, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna have a good discussion about wealth, about race, about economics. We have Matt Bruenig coming on in a second. What's happened in a lot of ways is that when we go to talk about wealth, we don't talk about it in context of what actually is going on. We talk about it in like a kind of blank kind of way where it doesn't matter that white folks have all the money. And essentially, because it doesn't matter that white folks have all the money, what we can do as a result is just make up a narrative around waste and wealth, like I'm just gonna be rich anyway. And many of the reasons that occurred is because the 80s sold that to us. The 80s sold to us an idea of a Cosby-esque dream, the idea of a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air home from a judge. The 80s sold to us an idea that we all can have anything and everything that we want, but wealth isn't actually doing that today. What wealth is actually doing today is it's actually calcifying amongst the wealthiest of us all. One of the people that I'm going to have on right now is Matt Bruenig. And Matt's going to allow us to actually get into a delve discussion about how race and wealth are actually kind of locking up right now. Do we have Matt online?
I'm here.
All right, thanks so much. So me and Matt did a piece just this week, and before I even did a piece, Matt jumped right on top of the new Federal Reserve 2016 data. I want to tell everybody they're going to be able to go to my Facebook and actually get me live on my Facebook to actually see the show in studio. I want to make sure everybody's able to get this. You can also go to Dash Radio at Dash Talk. Matt, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we just had a discussion this week, but I've been following your work for some years now. And essentially what you do is you take that data and you spin it. And you spin it and you spin it. And I think for a lot of people, they've seen your charts, but they never heard you actually speak. It's like that dude from Charlie's Angels that you never seen his face before. But so essentially they've seen you do your work. What inspired you to actually start charting things?
Well, I initially I studied poverty. That was the thing I was most interested in, and probably still is the thing I'm most interested in. And in order to study poverty effectively, you need to be able to use the income data that the census puts out. And so I had to learn, how to manipulate that data and get insights from it that could help with my poverty research. And the same skills that are useful for that also can apply for this wealth data that the Federal Reserve puts out. So I already kind of had those skills, the sort of data skills, ready to go from my poverty stuff, and so I just started applying it to wealth, and off I went.
Okay, and essentially, when did you start doing this kind of data work? Because I want to refer everybody to a couple of pieces. The one that we did, I'm gonna talk about first, and then we're gonna move over to the Obama piece that you did, which is just some wonderful work. I don't think at all you were on any kind of kick to actually put Obama down. You were just looking at what the data showed, as I understand it, correct?
Yeah, I don't have any ill will towards Obama, so it's just that this is the first data release that we've had since that kind of covers his whole presidency. So that was a natural way to Obama's out. What happened during his reign? That was, I thought, was a pretty obvious thing to look into.
Yeah, and I get that. And for me, essentially, let me make sure everybody understands when you say this data set. So what we're looking at is something called the Federal Survey of Consumer Finances. They release that every 3 years, and they just released for 2016 last week. And what it allows us to begin to do is understand where the country sits by race, by age, by so many different criteria, by region, I believe, as well. Correct, Matt?
I'm not sure about region, but everything else, yeah, it's they survey about 6,000. Sorry, they survey about 6,000 families every 3 years, and it's very, very in depth. They have basically, I think, on average, a 1-hour conversation with each family, which is not common for other kind of surveys that people do. But to actually figure all this stuff out, you really do have to sit down for an hour with someone and kind of go through their whole financial situation. What are your mortgages? What are your car notes? Do you have student debt? Do you own stocks? Do you own bonds? What's your retirement accounts like? They go through every single thing that you could think of when it comes to someone's finances, and then they also ask them about age and race and education and other sort of demographic variables. So what's left over at the end of the day is a representative sample of 6,000 families that you can use to really figure out all sorts of things, across all society.
Yeah, and what's a trip about what we found out, and I was talking back and forth with you, is there, it was reported that the middle black family was worth $16,600. It was reported as though that was an increase in the number, but 3/4 of that is the family car, and the family car, as Edward Wolf, a professor at NYU, has shown, is not a real asset. Can you explain why the Federal Reserve would consider the family car an asset? Is it to boost the numbers and make us feel better, or is it actually some other reasoning?
I don't know. I mean, the Federal Reserve, if you read the, I don't know the sort of text that they release with the data to kind of explain where does it come from, how big's the sample size, all that kind of stuff, they do say, like, for your convenience, we produce certain kinds of aggregates, such as net worth. And that's where you get that median black wealth is equal to 16,000. We produce those aggregates, but we don't endorse them necessarily. We just think it's easier for people to if we kind of produce those things. So if you have the data directly, it'll tell you every single kind of asset each family has, every single kind of debt each family has, and by itself, it doesn't actually add those up in any particular way. But they sort of conveniently give you a little help and like, oh, here's sort of net worth. If you just took all this stuff and added it together, here's what it would be. But we don't necessarily endorse that definition of wealth. You should come up with your own definition that you think is suitable. But the net effect is most people who cover the report, of course, they're just going to cover whatever the Federal Reserve kind of conveniently puts out. They don't have the ability to go into the numbers, and even if they did, they wouldn't feel comfortable contradicting the Federal Reserve. So even though they say they don't endorse the way that they define wealth, which includes the family car, even though they say they don't endorse that, that ends up being what everyone talks about.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think that what's a trip is, when you get to the reality that the middle black family is worth $4,000, we look over at the middle white family, and I believe the number was $160 with the family car and $140 without. And again, that $4,000 still includes the TV, the couch, things that shouldn't be included. If we get down to a number of $2,500 for the middle black family, do black Americans have enough to be American? Is the question that we start to ask ourselves. Do they have enough to actually achieve the things as far as like a goal of having a home, of having kids to go to college, or are we all just being run into a circle? And I know you like to expand the dialogue beyond just African Americans, and I understand that half of America has saw no gains. Can we talk about like how this applies to like white America as well?
Yeah, I mean, so one way to think about it is to say that, black families, the whole black wealth curve is sort of shifted down the wealth ladder. So the middle black family, their wealth is as if we're talking about maybe the 25th percentile white family. So I don't know if that's too technical, but like think about the white family in which 25% of white families are poor and 75% are wealthier. That's basically where the middle black family is. So they're kind of they're just sort of in general shifted down the distribution, and so they're living much different lives overall. And like you said, some of the bigger aspects of that are going to be things that wealth are very important for, including paying for college, including being able to buy housing in good areas, and retirement and security if you become unemployed and that kind of thing. Living much different lives than the middle white family, but they're living somewhat similar lives to sort of the bottom fourth of white families.
Yeah, but two things. So we can catch the show at Zoe Williams' YouTube page right now.
Oh yeah. It's broadcasting live.
So we're broadcasting live at Zoe Williams' YouTube page. That's the Zoe What Show.
The Zoe What Show, no spaces.
Yeah, so go over there. We'll get it on ToneTalks YouTube next week. Let's get the dialogue going, get the discussion going. Go on the Zoe What Show YouTube page. You can actually see us in studio. I'm gonna put up a DSLR version of the show this weekend. But let's just keep the dialogue going. What I really want to hash down though is what do the dreams look like for the white family that's in the 25th percentile? Because I think for what Obama kind of introduced is the idea that anybody can go to college, anybody can become president without telling everybody his backstory. And so, when you start dealing with the top black, the equivalent black family to the 25th percentile of the white families, I don't know if they have the same dreams, particularly coming out of a world where we saw the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air show a judge leaving what would be the equivalent to a $20 million LA home every day. The dreams don't all add up. And so and if you add in, Jay-Z and the idea that you could drop out of high school and still make $500 million with no dynastic wealth. Like, I think part of what we've seen as a result of the way that black people have digested wealth is a recreation of the narrative of what wealth means in America and how easily or how hard it is to get that wealth. So let's start looking at this thing. Is there dynastic wealth? When I say dynastic, intergenerational wealth in America today?
Yeah,
I mean, not
absolutely.
America, but I mean for black Americans today.
Oh, not really, no. Inheritance for black Americans is very, very, very low. And for white Americans, it's much, much, much higher. I'm actually going to do a piece on inheritance soon. There is inheritance information that is released in the survey, and it's a little bit more difficult to pull out, but I'm going to do I'm going to do inheritance soon using the same data. But generally, yeah, a lot of white wealth is inherited. Very, very little black wealth is.
Yeah. But like, what does that mean? When we say a lot of white wealth is inherited, very little black wealth is inherited, does that mean black people won't have a good chance of getting wealth going forward?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, wealth, the best way to get wealth is to already have wealth. So, it's a sort of an unfair aspect of how wealth works. But if you have a lot of wealth, then that wealth tends to gain in value through interest, dividends, capital gains, that sort of thing. And so if you don't start out with much, then you usually don't wind up with much, and that is generally true for most black families, and not as true for white families, where there is quite a lot of both inheritance and also some what are called in vivo transfers.
Yes.
So white families also will transfer money in the middle of their kids' lives, not necessarily just when they die. So helping with the down payment
College.
on a first home, or helping to pay for college, which we don't think of as a wealth transfer, but really is, because it keeps you from having to take on debt, which is, how you get negative net worth. So yeah, I mean, it's a big difference in how those lives unfold.
Yeah, and what seems to be a trip is there's something in your background there that's ringing.
Yeah, sorry, the clock.
It's okay. What seems to be interesting though, and we saw this with the Harvard data that came out maybe not too long ago, that showed that while Harvard presumed that it had black people, it mostly had new Africans, West Indian people, and biracials. And when we look at President Obama, we can look no further but see examples of both things in his life, which him being East African and then him being half white. The dynamic of having black people who benefit from white people in their family tree, hiding the realities of how bad it is for black people. Because I mean, when you look at Obama, he inherited nearly $400,000 to $500,000 in stock from his white grandmother, and so you begin to understand one of the dynamics that we see as a result is that we can't tell how many gifts that people get throughout life, but you can kind of project that backwards, because rarely do you see someone just get $500,000. Most likely they got 1,000 here, 2,000 there throughout their life, while other black people really lived a genuinely black, no inheritance, no help kind of life, and it masked everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some data about not even just the big expenditures, but just kind of monthly assistance that people get when they're young. The New York Times had a great article on this a while ago, and they broke that down by race. And it was the case that sort of 20-something white people, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they're getting, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month in help from their parents. And of course, black and Latino 20-somethings are usually getting much less. And that adds up to a lot. And also, even just aside from how much it adds to your net worth, it also gives you, opportunity to kind of be flexible at that age, which is important because you're kind of trying to get on the career ladder and get into, a good job that'll allow you to, move up as you age. And if you don't have the ability to get help from your parents during that stage of life, you kind of just have to take whatever job you can just to subsist, and that might be a job that has no upward potential. And so the net effects just compound over the course of your whole, working life.
And so let me ask you this harder question then. What then does that mean for black folk in terms of, when we look at these numbers, 20 million black families, only 380,000 are worth more than $1 million. And while you can't tell, I'm willing to bet that the large bulk of those 380,000 are at 1.1, 1.2, well below 2. So what does that mean in terms of their ability to create community, to compete, to give advantages to their children that allow them to do those very same things, to give opportunity? Because what's a trip is that we're not even counting those hitting values of being white. The ability to be in communities where you can make calls to get your kid in that corporate ladder that you just talked about right now. So I guess as I start to move to break, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the solutions?
Well, so Sandy Darity has an idea to give
baby bonds.
Yeah, there's baby bonds, and you've probably talked about that before. But it's basically like when you're born, you get, maybe, $4,000 set aside for you in a trust fund, and it gathers, interest while you're growing up, and then when you become a young adult, you get access to it. So that's the one way that you could do it. I have some more extravagant ideas around basically owning basically moving a lot of private wealth into public hands, owning it kind of collectively, and then paying out dividends on the wealth to everyone collectively. Alaska has a program sort of like this that they call the Alaska Permanent Fund. But yeah, I mean, basically you need to change who owns the wealth, I mean, one way or another. And there are different ideas for how to do that, whether that's baby bonds or my kind of social wealth fund idea. You got to change how wealth is owned and who owns it.
Yeah, I mean, but that sounds like we got to change America. I mean, and right now we have Trump as president, and everything about his policies say he has no intention on changing who owns wealth. If we look at his tax reform plan, and so when we get honest about this thing, I start looking at books like Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century, which says that we have wealth inequality similar to the Gilded Age, and I have to wonder, how does the black psyche that creates or is undergirded by Jay-Z, Beyonce, LeBron James really operate in an America where quickly it will become obvious that they don't have enough? And you know, that's not something I'll put into you as an answer. That's more just me making a statement that what you're stating needs to happen, I totally agree with. I just don't know if we're there now in a political sense.
Yeah, well, definitely not under Trump, and probably not even when Democrats are in control. You know, Obama didn't make an effort of changing the distribution of wealth in society or even talking about it, really. So.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, man, and I appreciate you calling in. We're going to go to break. Thank you so much for your time. I think everybody really took away from your conversation a great dialogue about what's going on here in terms of the data. I'll tell everybody, please tell them a little bit about your website so everybody can go there to get more information, and then we'll go to break.
Yeah, it's peoplespolicyproject.org. We're a crowdfunded think tank that produces, data and reports on wealth, income, inequality, poverty, basically how our economic system is so bad and serves a very, very small elite as opposed to, people more broadly.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Let's go to break right now. Is that coming on? Yeah, well, this is Antonio Moore coming back to you. Thank you again for coming into the ToneTalks show. Essentially, I'm going to bring in some more guests here. I got Zoe Williams in the building. I just got through having Matt Bruenig. I just got through having Matt Bruenig, and essentially I'm going to have Yvette Carnell right now come in, and we're going to have a discussion. We're going to have a discussion about some of the more recent data that's been coming out, some of the recent information that's been coming out, everything from Cam Newton, because we got to wonder whether Cam Newton really lost his sponsorship over what they saying. Was it that, or was it the fist in the air?
Right.
And we got to start looking at these things a little deeper. You guys have seen me talk with Yvette Carnell in the past. This woman is powerful. She brings the heat. She's known for breaking ground. Just maybe a month ago, she brought out that black people are getting hookworms, and their legislator was worried about DACA. And before you knew it, the next day, that legislator was saying, "I'm going to get to Paul Ryan about these hookworms that black people have." 2 months ago, she backed Monique, as Monique said black actresses were not getting paid enough. So what I want to do now is bring Yvette on the line.
Keep talking.
Well, I want to bring Yvette on the line, and so essentially, can you bring her on the call? Okay, Yvette, are you there?
I'm there. What's going on, family?
Oh man, I can't believe this. I can't believe that we got Yvette Carnell. I know everybody's been wanting to hear from you. They've been wanting to hear from you for the last few weeks. So here we go. We about to take a ride. I hope they understand where we're going, because we're gonna before we get into the hot topics, because every show what we're gonna do right around maybe around this time to 8:15, we're gonna do something called Hot Topics, where we hit up the hot topics of that week after we come out of having a harder discussion. And I want to talk about you and some of the things that you have going on. your channel. I want to talk about the Angela Project. With Breaking Brown, what has been your goal of what you want to do with your YouTube channel as far as Black politics?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Antonio, for having me on. I mean, everybody who listens to me knows that you have been on my show, Breaking Brown Live, a number of times. And so they know that we work together. But I want to thank you, and I want to congratulate you, on this new venture, having your own talk show. In terms of Breaking Brown, what we do is political education. And I think that in terms of the groundwork that has to be laid in order for African Americans, descendants of slaves, to get what we need to get, we have to educate ourselves first, because we don't know what it means to be Black, to be African American, and the consequence of being African American economically in terms of what we were missed and what we were robbed of. And so that's what Breaking Brown is all about. And Breaking Brown's on hiatus right now. We'll be back soon. We're not going to leave anybody out there.
No, I totally understand. And me and Yvette are working with none other than pastor, the pastor out of St. Louis. You want to tell them a little bit about him?
Kentucky, out of Louisville.
Out of Louisville. You want to tell them a little bit about him?
Well, I mean, Dr. Kevin Cosby is one of the only pastors, and I'm sure there are pastors. I don't know every pastor. I'm sure there are pastors who are doing similar things, but he's trying to do stuff in terms of incorporating political education and the early tradition of radicalism that was a part of the Black church early on that kind of got taken from the Black church. And he's trying to incorporate that into his ministry in terms of leadership, in terms of saying, no, this isn't just about coming to church on Sunday. This is about what you do and what you learn and what you know every day of the week. And so what I want to do, and what you've been trying to do also, is like get together with him and do something phenomenal for African Americans that makes sense and is actionable in terms of something that could produce results for the Black political economy. And that's what we've been up to.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we want to do, and we have this thing called the Angela Project, where we really want to get into the delving topic of reparations. For so long, African Americans have talked around it, not talked about it. But now, if you look at the numbers by Bruenig, and I think Yvette is more than familiar with some of the data that's come out, because if she didn't hear it in the article, she got it from me in terms of just sharing it with her. But this data that's coming out is showing that by 2053, the middle Black family might be worth $0. And this data is also showing that we don't have millionaires the way we believe them to be. This data is showing that the decadent veil, something that I talk about, that I'll be talking about on this show, where Black celebrities creating a false calm about wealth, is very real. And I kind of wanted to say that what we're going to try to do is move government to transformative policies that focus on descendants of American slavery. You want to say something about the Angela Project?
Well, yeah, I think the Angela Project is very important. It's focused on the first African slaves to reach American soil. And that's where we come from. Because what happens too often is that we don't want to talk about where we come from. We don't want to talk about the fact that we come from slaves. We want to brush it under the rug and not talk about the fact that the wealth from slavery is still in the system and the poverty is still in the system. That's a conversation that we don't always want to have. And I think what the Angela Project does is bring us back to that conversation. And it also brings white people back to that conversation. And we talk about what we can do in terms of what is actionable for African Americans. I'm not in a space, and you're not in a space, I know, we're like, white people are bad, black people are good. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about helping them understand how they have benefited from not being descendants of slaves, and helping us understand how we have been robbed by being descendants of slaves. And that's what we're all about. It's all a part of the project.
And let me tell everybody that I think there's a bit of an audio they're trying to get set up. You can go to the Dash Radio app and press Dash Talk, and you can actually hear Yvette talk as well. So essentially, by pressing that, what you'll be able to hear is both sides of the conversation as we get the audio set up on the board. So essentially, what I want to do is ask you, I guess, another question about politics and race and everything, and just see where do you see this going?
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is that we have to differentiate ourselves. for far too long, black people have seen themselves in line with everybody who has pigmentation, right? And I had somebody say this on YouTube today. Somebody said, well, Yvette, you're lighter skinned than, the people that I see day to day. You're lighter skinned. My kids are a fourth African American, and you're lighter skinned than them. And who are you to talk about? Listen, the problem is, and I'm just going to be honest, the problem is that you're ignorant. The problem is who we are is not based on colorism, which is kind of a prejudice. Who we are is based on lineage. And you came up with something a while ago to kind of show people what that means and who you should have a connection to. So we have the same lineage. My mama comes from sharecroppers. We have a lot of the same lineage. I have two black parents come from slavery. That's who we are. So you can't tell me that, we're not the same. So you think that because you're darker skinned, you think you have more in common with an Indian or a Pakistani or a Mexican than me. And that's just not true. That's just not how you define your tribe. So one of the things that we have to do going forward is define our tribe. And my tribe, your tribe, is African Americans. And I think what we have to do is define ourselves. And I think that's part of, if there's anything that I can say we should get credit for, is helping African Americans define ourselves, because we have to be selfish in a world where everybody else is selfish. Everybody is selfish, but they tell us don't be selfish. It doesn't work that way. That's not how capitalism works.
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing, because I look over at the Native Americans and they use things like the blood quantum laws. The highest blood quantum law is used by something like I believe the Utes tribe, and they use 5/8. And the reason why you would use 5/8 is basically to keep people out. I don't want half mixes to all of a sudden be considered Indian. And then you go as low as 1/16. But for Black America, what we've defined Black America as is just being black, I guess. And what that's led to is you can't even get to reparations. There's this great new book that came out about race and wealth. I forget the title, eludes me right now, but I listened to the author talk about I think it's like color of law. It eludes me right now.
Yes.
And when I heard her talk about it, she just talked about we can do this, we can change things if black people got what white people got back in the 50s or the 30s or the 20s or the teens. The problem is that immigration changed all that. And we can't do anything about reparations, in my mind, until we actually define what is going to be the group that receives these reparations. Sandy Darity has went as far as to use certain criteria, like you have to have, I believe, marked Negro on the census 10 years ago at least, and also have a slave descendant. I believe we might even need to go further. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you might need to go further. I think you might need to go, because most people who come from sharecroppers and stuff have more than one person in their genetics background who is a descendant of a slave. Like they got married and they got married and then they had babies. It's usually more than one. I think you have to go a little bit deeper than just one, right? Because it's not necessarily enough, and it allows a whole lot of people to get in there. But there's a lot that has to be dealt with. But I think the thing for me to understand is that we can do it, though, right? Like what we're trying to flesh through is how it's done, but we understand that it has to be done, and we also understand that it should have been done a long time ago. This isn't something that should have been done just now. It should have been done a long time ago. Like our ancestors should have been given 40 acres and a mule a long time ago. So nobody's saying that this is not complicated. It is complicated, but when you talk about Native Americans, if Native Americans did it, then I don't understand why you can't tell us that we can't do it, that we can't have this blood quantum law. Why can't we do it? I think we can do it. We just have not had the will to do it. People might not want to say this, but Black Americans or African Americans are real good at taking in strays. We're real good at taking in somebody that kind of looks like us, kind of wears the same kind of clothes as us, but they're not us. And so we have to have something that defines us as a particular group, because everybody else has it, and it works for them, and it works for everybody, and we got to have it too.
Yeah, and I agree, but now we get into the whole discussion before we get to hot topics. We get into this whole discussion about policing blackness. Now everybody wants to say that until they deal with who really got to deal with being black, because I kind of look at it like this. I'm not dealing with genetics right now. I'm dealing more with just the experience of being black. if you have 5 or 6 different hard qualities, I think you experience a version of blackness that you can't communicate to another kind of black person. Let me explain. So if you're a male in the South that has a felony that, say, doesn't have a college degree, doesn't have wealth, you experience a harsh version of racism that somebody say that's lighter and darker skin and larger. I'm adding in a number of qualities, and there might be more, but like I don't have all those qualities myself. But if you're a lighter skinned, curly haired female in Los Angeles with a white mother that lives in Beverly Hills, you all of a sudden don't understand the darkness of race. You think you do, but you don't really have to deal with what we saw Alton Sterling have to deal with. You don't really have to deal with selling cigarillos outside of a liquor store. You don't have to deal with the police pulling you over and thinking you're a threat. And so, like, as a result, what happens is you become the person that speaks for black folk, but you can't speak for black folk. And you become an easy out for white America. And I think that one of the things that we start to see is that black America is largely in denial about race, about social consequence, about gender, about so many issues, to the point where we're just ducking our heads in the sand. What do you think?
Well, I agree. Let me just say something. As a very light-skinned black woman myself, I have never been harassed by the police. I have never been pulled over by the police, unless I did something wrong. Like when I got pulled over by the police, I had forgot to put my tags on my car. Like I have never had these things happen to me, and that is the reason why I don't try to speak for people who have had those things happen. What I do try to do is research the data and try to empower people who have experienced those situations. That's what I try to do. But I will never tell you I know how you feel. I would never tell you I know what you went through. I would never tell you, well, that happened to me, because that would be a lie. And so what we have, really and truthfully, we have a bunch of boomers. We have a bunch of people who, you may have one white parent who say, well, I get to speak for black people. And what we have never asked those people is based on what? What credentials do you have to speak on behalf of African Americans, to speak on behalf of what African Americans go through? Now, what I like to do also is I like to give my people a vehicle. That's why I did a call-in show, so you can call in and tell me what happened to you. I want to be your voice. But these people aren't doing that. They're going on CNN. They're going on MSNBC. They're going on all these stations and telling white people, oh, well, it's not that bad, because I'm okay. I do all right, and we just got to come together. And they don't know anything about what regular black people experience in their day-to-day lives, and they don't try to find out.
Yeah, and
so what we have to do is a disproportionate number of them too.
And it's a trip because in some ways what I begin to see is that black folk don't know about wealth. And when I say that, I don't mean that they don't know how to count wealth. I think that everybody knows how to count money. But in terms of understanding the dynamic of dynastic white wealth and how real it is in America, they don't understand it. Look here, like when we have these conversations on Tone Talks, I want you to understand, don't let the LA hat fool you. My circle, no, because the thing that happens is, like, what in mass incarceration, what rap has done is it's diminished a certain look, and what it's made everybody believe is that I need to check his sources. Well, you go check William Darity, and you go check Byron Allen, and you go check the guy I just brought on, Matt Bruenig, and just check the article I just did with Matt Bruenig, and then you can start to understand I'm not playing when I tell you black folk don't have no millionaires. So there's 20 million black families, 40 million blacks, 20 million families, 380,000 are worth $1 million or more. And everybody's talking about retirement, a $50,000 college. Everybody is talking and dreaming. And then we wonder why our divorce rate is so high. What's happened right here is that America never gave us what we were owed. And as a result of America not giving us what we were owed, we reformatted everything like we really did receive it. We started to live through the Cosbys instead of becoming the reality of what the Cosbys should have been, a political powerhouse. And for me, what I look at is we look over at white America and we really don't understand. And part of my work, part of what I'm doing here is to tell you that 15% of white families are worth $1 million or more. 13 million families. A full nearly 1 million are worth over $12 million. That means that they have whole communities that are stable, not just wealthy, stable. That means that in Black America, largely the reason why you see the kind of crippling effects on relationships and everything is we don't have the wealth to be stable. The question becomes, how do we get that wealth? And I believe it's through transformative politics instead of selling Herbalife. I believe it's in transformative politics instead of continuously coming up with the idea that you're going to be Jay-Z. I'm going to tell you something else about me, because you're going to have to learn about me as we did this show. I represented Skee-Lo, who did the song I Wish. It was it was Grammy nominated in 94, one of the hottest songs in 94, platinum. And what I learned is that when you look at hip hop, if you miss the window, you miss the window. Baby, Sean Diddy Combs, Jay-Z, and Ice Cube was all born the same year, 1969. I was born in 79. The only thing I did was I came in late and found somebody who was born around the same time as them that didn't get what he was owed. But there's no new window in hip hop. So stop telling me you going to the studio as an answer for Black wealth, because it don't solve the problem. And so I want to give you the chance to tell me what you feel the data is showing. What do you think it means when we see that that there's only 380,000 Black millionaires? And again, before I even throw it to you, I believe a large number of those are boomers that are counting their house, their pension, and I believe they're in like 5 cities. They're not spread throughout like America, like white wealth, because that tends to be business oriented, whereas Black wealth is through that residential property. So these people are all in LA, San Francisco, New York, and Maryland, and they all live around each other and have no idea that the rest of Black America is poor. And so like what I wanted to ask you is, what do you think it means that there aren't any Black millionaires, for the potential for Black America versus the reality of Black America in their head?
I mean, you want the truth?
Yeah. You want ToneTalks? You can bring it.
I mean, the truth is this is the end game for them. Like honestly, if we don't get our stuff together, this is their end game.
Who's there? Who's there when you say there?
When you talk about the majority, when you talk about the people who set this whole thing up, I'm not talking about just a regular white person walking on the street, but when you talk about the policy makers and the players and the business owners, the barons of industry who set this thing up, this is game over for them. You got to think about how this happened. After the Civil Rights Act, Civil Rights movement, you had all these, the Immigration Act, which brought all these immigrants in to replace us. We have H-1B visas to replace us. Then not only that, you have the second master stroke, which convinces us that we have something that we don't have. You know, because if we understood, Antonio, that we don't have shit, I mean, if we understood that, then we would actually rebel. We'll be in the streets. The master stroke of this thing is to convince us to live through people, a few aberrations who have something, even though the majority of us, don't talk about majority like 51%. You talked about how few million Black millionaires there are. They're virtually, I mean, you might as well say I saw Superman if you say I saw a Black millionaire. That's what we are. But we have convinced the majority of Black people to live through these few people and say, you know what? He's Superman. He was born with great powers, meaning that he came along during a time where boomers got some stuff. But I believe I too can have those superpowers. I believe that can happen to me based on nothing. So what I have to say is that this is a super stroke. This is a master stroke of genius, because we have become our own enemy.
I agree.
What this propaganda has done is make us turn against ourselves. So if me and you say, you know what, we don't have money, then our own people will turn against us and say, you know what, you're being negative.
I agree.
Instead of turning against those people and being like, why don't we have money?
I agree entirely. I think in many ways what you start to see is that Black America becomes Horatio Alger, self-motivated, driven, in a way that none of the data actually supports. Wealth is calcifying. Amazon is not playing. They're trying to shut down Walmart. But I hear you talking about that one lady with a grocery store in Compton. And so for me, what I don't think we understand is ain't no dry cleaners gonna move you on up no more. And what you're gonna have to understand is that transformative government is the true answer, because then it empowers you with the tools to actually demand more. You know how many teachers lost their jobs under President Obama. You know how many due to Arnie Duncan and the race to the top and the charterization of our school systems. You know you know what Uber is doing to reorganize the way people think about labor in all the wrong ways. In a sense, you just willing to work at any time, at any minute, for any minute amount of money. I'm talking about actually willing to pay to work. Because when you count Uber and you add it all up, you almost paying to work. And the thing that we all break our necks for is the idea that this somehow will lead us into being a millionaire. And what white folks is doing is saying, well, some of y'all white millionaires got to get out the room too. And we think we coming in the room. And so what I want to do, Yvette, is I'm going to go to break. Then I'm going to bring you back. We're going to do some hot topics. And we're gonna come back and we're gonna do some hot topics, and then I'm gonna take some calls. And thank you so much, everybody. That try to start calling in at the number that I gave you before. I'll give it to you at the other side. Yeah. We back again. We gonna go right into the Tone Talks hot topics. What this section will be is me talking to Yvette Carnell or any other guests about hot topics in the news this week. I have 4. And if Yvette wants to add one, she can at the end. But let's get through these 4. See if we how we feeling about them. We're gonna start off by looking at the whole NFL protests. You know, you had all of these African American men that were standing up against the NFL, something we hadn't seen literally in our lifetime. You know, in so many ways, our lifetime has been totally apolitical, and you all of a sudden you saw the rise of Black Lives Matter, and you saw these young African American millionaire men say that they're going to stand up as well. The only issue is were they standing up were they kneeling, I should say, for the right reasons? Because Kaepernick kneeled for black oppression, for black police brutality. They were kneeling for everything from unity to respecting police. I just didn't understand. Yvette, what do you feel?
The protest is being whitewashed. I mean, listen, when I remember David Horn of Mother Jones came out, and after Trump said what he said about the protest, he came out and said the protest will henceforth be about Trump. It will be in opposition to Trump. And what you've had amongst a lot of liberals is the acceptance that this is going to be about Trump now. But let's be clear. This is not why Kaepernick was kneeling. Kaepernick talked about black bodies in the street. He talks about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump both being liars. That's what he said. So what you have now is a bunch of liberal commentators trying to make the Kaepernick protest be about something that it's not about. And I think we need to stand up against that, because what happens is this is just propaganda, right? This is what propaganda is. And what Corn was trying to do was trying to shift attention from black people being murdered in the streets by police officers, police brutality, from a crooked, because what Kaepernick did was condemn the whole political system. He says, listen, you got a Democrat who ain't worth nothing, you got a Republican who ain't worth nothing. I don't understand how either of these people is our candidate. And you have people now trying to make this just about Trump. And so what we have to try to do, and what we have to be successful at doing, and what we forget about doing, is that this whole thing we're doing, this whole political game, part of that political game is propaganda. And we have to have our own propaganda, but we have to make sure we don't fall prey to other people's propaganda. And that's what we're doing. We're falling prey. This ain't about Trump. This people forget that Kaepernick started protesting long before Trump was even the president. This is not an opposition to Trump. This is a condemnation of the entire political system and police brutality and the way African Americans are treated within that system. And we have to stay true to that.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I looked at it and I said, I did a piece on Newsmax. I said, Kaepernick, back in April, I said Kaepernick may never play football again for saying Black Lives Matter. I see the NFL very differently than other people, just like I see the NBA. I see it as a place where they sell cheap jerseys for expensive prices. And they don't play basketball and football. And what they do that second, I should say. You know, that's the loss leader. You know how like at Best Buy they got the $2 DVDs in the front, but that's not what they trying to sell you at Best Buy. They just trying to sell you that big iPad or that MacBook you don't know,
TV.
you don't need. But like they
Yep.
use the $1.99 CD to get you through the door, or DVD, I should say. And so like I see the game as that methodology to get you through the door. And so like what ends up happening is like when you have somebody like Kaepernick use this platform, people try to see it through the lens of Ali, but they forget Ali never sold a glove with his own name until way in the 80s. When he was talking all that, he was not part of no engine, no league. When he was talking all that, he was truly Muslim with Malcolm X on his shoulder. And so like what you get is in some cases confused people who yesterday were in the Sports Illustrated ad naked, and then today are protesting. So we kind of like, who is this person? And we commend him for doing it, for making the change. But we have to really see as a result of the engine that is the NFL, in some ways the protest actually is muted, because we see the same thing, and I'm going to transition to LeBron James in a second. But fundamentally what we start to see is that people can't really wrap their head around this isn't really a megaphone that you think it is. These people don't have a platform that you think they do. And so they in many ways have a muted megaphone. So it's one of those megaphones that you can shut off whenever they get too loud. And
what's the point of it? What's the point of a muted megaphone? What's the point?
To sell jerseys. So like when we get back to it, it's like the bread and circus. I said this in my piece on Newsmax. I said you can't have the ringleader of the circus turn around and tell the people there ain't no bread. So like if you think about this in context of old gladiator times, they used to put the gladiators on the field so they didn't have to fix the aqueducts. So they didn't have to give people bread. Well, I just gave you the wealth data. So if they tell you enough times that you too can be Kaepernick, you too can play football and escape from coming from nothing, which I don't agree with. No black folk in America come from nothing. We come from strength and beautiful people that survived a lot of things. This whole mentality, this whole mantra that so many rappers and superstars portray about coming from nothing, coming from the bottom. I just it is what it is. But I will say that when you have Kaepernick turn around as a franchise quarterback and say to the people that police brutality is a problem, you can't have that in the NFL. We not you can't upset these white people with all the money that buy our jerseys. We'll cut you off. We'll cut the water off. And I think the NFL is running into a conundrum now, because can you cut the water off on all the players? And now you have the players running into a conundrum because they need that money. They're not true millionaires. What do I mean? All that money is spent. You gotta realize that they get paid in a check. Don't nobody in this country other than lottery winners get paid in a check the way these players get paid. Salary. Like they get paid like when CEOs and everybody else gets paid that big money like that, it's in vehicles. It's in vehicles where you avoid taxes. These people are paid exorbitant amounts of money. I think they showed Steph Curry, he doesn't really getting 200 million. He really getting like 115 or some crazy low number. And I know that sounds crazy to say 115 is low, but giving up $70 million in tax, I know white people out there giggling about it.
Trump.
You know, you look at Zuckerberg. I think he took $1 in salary. I don't even want salary. That's that horrible money. So I come back to you and I start to say, do you think that the NFL is where our protests, or the NBA is where our protests can even start, or even can they even take part in our protests and really?
Well, listen. Protests, and I said this a year ago actually, in an article for Counterpoint. I said I didn't have faith in the Kaepernick protest because protests don't start from the top to the bottom. They go from the bottom to the top. Okay, so what I'm saying is that these people, Kaepernick and all these other guys, and I agree. I say wholeheartedly support what he's doing for as long as he's doing it. but they don't have any power. I don't know a black person, an African American who has power. I don't know an African American who, if white people decide to pull the plug, they won't be broke.
Cut their
I don't
water
know
off.
those people.
Yeah,
I don't know any of those people.
Yeah, I you know, it's funny because the most honest conversation I got from somebody who's truly wealthy, and everybody should go check out my ToneTalks YouTube channel and check out my interview with Byron Allen. Shout out to him. Just you know, a lot of people get hung up about him having a white wife. I'm not here for the personal politics. What I really look at is the willingness to bring lawsuits, whether it's for personal benefit or for group benefit, that really challenge the power paradigm on why black folks don't have no channel on TV, no real channel where we own 100% outright. Why we got to have somebody police our content. And so, like, you know, here you have a black man on my channel tell y'all, a black man that now is worth $1 billion. You know, I'll tell you that he's worth $1 billion. I don't have to give my source. Again, I told you my circle. So essentially, you have a black man worth $1 billion. Tell black America that there's economic genocide going on, that Obama could have done more, that he knows Obama could have done more, and that we need to demand more. And I think that we got to kind of hear that call, and we got to also hear the reality that, you know, I did a land piece. Go check it out. Google Black America land. It'll probably come up first. What I showed is that Black America owns less rural land in this country than 6 white families combined. Just Ted Turner owns a quarter of the same amount of land as all of Black America. Just Ted Turner. I mean, isn't that sickening, Yvette?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
man.
mean, it is sickening. I mean, it's sickening in proportion to what we have contributed to this country. This country would not be the richest country in the world were it not for African Americans. That's just a fact. That's not something that I'm just saying or I'm trying to make up. That's just a fact. It's a fact that people like to ignore, though. And so what we have here, what we have is just like this kind of schizophrenic America where people like to just walk over like our contribution. And we've never really forced them to kind of come to terms with, no, we really did this. We really built this from the cotton to you lived off of us in terms of what you were able to give your people because we had less. We've always had nothing so you could have everything.
I agree.
And at a certain point, you have to, and so the only way they have made us not get fed up is by saying, look, you do have a lot. Look at these few people here. And they show us Serena and Jay-Z and Beyonce and all these people over and over and over again. For some reason, we don't realize that we've just been shown the same images over and over again. These are the same people. Somebody showed me Steve Harvey. And I was like, listen, I remember when Steve Harvey was doing a show about high school students in Bullethead when he still had a toupee. That was 20 years ago. These are the same people they're recycling to me, trying to show me African-American success. It's a lie.
I want to give everybody to call in to talk to me and Yvette because we can do it all at once now. We in a big studio now. Thanks to shout out to Dash Radio, Dash Talk. We here with Zoe Williams, Mr. Barry Gordy himself. And essentially, what we can do now is something that we haven't been able to do, where we can actually joint answer your calls. I think we have a caller on the line. You can call in at 323-879-4445. Please be on topic because we're talking black wealth today, and you never know what we'll be talking about tomorrow. Let's bring that call in. Hello, caller.
Hello.
How are you doing? This is Antonio Moore. You want to say your name and where you're calling from?
We were calling from Florida.
Okay. Is it you wanted to?
I've read before. Yeah. So actually, so I just wanted to say, like, okay, so I'm a millennial. I'm 31. Struggling just like the rest of us, and I wonder, like, when you bring up these numbers, one thing that I like about you and Yvette is that y'all connect how our economic situation, our political situation, how we deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And I think what happened is, because you guys are a little bit older, for millennials, we don't know how to we don't connect the numbers and the statistics to our everyday life, to the fact, to why you don't have a girlfriend, why you don't have a boyfriend, why you're not married, you know, why you had to, when you were living with your parents, you had to pay bills when your white friends didn't have to pay bills when they were living with their parents at 23, 24, 25, you know? And So we get into these arguments with each other, or we break up with each other, or we fight or whatever, and we don't understand how much of that is rooted in generational poverty. And so I just wanted to give you and Yvette a shout out, and Zoe too, because Zoe does a little bit of that on his show. But like, how all of this connects, you know? And when I try to talk to millennials, I don't think they get it. They separate the numbers from their everyday life, and I think that's a big problem.
I think in many ways what we saw is a masterful job done by Capital to convince black people that they too had opportunity, chance, and everything else. It started, I believe, in the mid '80s. I did a piece. You can go Google it. Cosby Show Dreams, and what I talked about is how the Cosby Show shifted our mindset. In many ways, I have to attribute some positive, elements to showing a nuclear family that had some level of wealth, but they were pretty much apolitical. And in addition, they did not give context to the reality of what Reaganomics was doing to Black America, nor did they give context to the reality of what wealth was even doing as far as starting to aggregate. And so now what we have is a generation of apolitical, self-individual people that don't understand wealth, and I'm here to break that up. You know, I'm here to not just break that up for the reason of being contrarian, because I need you to come back down and understand that Black America is suffering, so that we together as a community can demand more. You know what I'm saying, Yvette? You want to say something to the caller?
No. I agree with I agree.
I just want to leave you guys with a little something before I go.
I don't want to take up too much time, but I agree.
Oh, go ahead, caller.
I just want to leave you with something. So I went on a date with a young lady a few months ago, and she was a teacher. She had a master's degree, you know, cute girl. And we got into the conversation of like where Black people are as a community. And I guess because she's an Army brat, and you know all her siblings and her graduated college, and like I said, she had a master's degree, living on her own. We got into the conversation of agency, and I tried to explain to her how little agency we actually have, especially as a Black man. And it's like she couldn't wrap her mind around it. To her side, it's like and so it goes back to what Yvette says, is like, these are the people that are speaking for us. You don't understand what I'm saying. and that scared me, you know, because the conversation got to that place because we were talking about schools and university and college, and she made a comment. And being from the South, we don't really universities the way people in the Northeast do. Like in the Northeast, it's all about, oh, I went to this school and this school is ranked that. In the South, we don't do that too much. And so when me and her got into that conversation, it eventually led to, like, you know, because I'm from Florida, she thinks we don't take education that seriously. And you know, I did find that a little insulting. But when the conversation got to Black people and how little agency we actually have, it was interesting to me to be talking to a young lady with a master's degree that's, you know, she was smart, but she just didn't understand what I was saying. And that scared me, because I'm like, wow, this is, but I didn't start listening to Yvette like that yet, so I never heard her make that comment. But when I heard of that, make that comment, it instantly reminded me of that date, you know. And, you know, that's all I just want to leave you with. Like, yes, this is real. You know, people are really disconnected, and the educated ones of us, quote unquote educated ones of us, that are going to these Ivy League schools or second tier schools, they're the ones that are speaking for us. And that's why white society, even though they never really had any sympathy for us, they really don't have it now, because these people are the people that are speaking for us now.
All right, so man, I totally appreciate you calling in. I want to talk to Yvette a little bit more. The last thing I'm just gonna say to you is, our wealth is highly regionalized. Somebody asked on Facebook whether the wealth, this $1 million that these few Black families has, is boomers and it's in their house. Yeah, you're about right, sir. The primary asset is the real estate, is the primary property, maybe a secondary property. Not many have businesses, so it's basically your house, maybe a secondary property. And you got to realize that in a place like LA that's highly colorized, people are second or third generation. Luckily, got the GI Bill because they're in a certain region, and basically have not really lived the center of the Black experience in many ways. And so, like, what you find is that Black America largely has been shut out of wealth, but a few Black people have basically decided that they're going to live amongst each other and create another narrative about Black wealth, and then project that to white America through their children's getting opportunities, whether it be Valerie Jarrett's child being on CNN or anything else that we see out there. What I want to do is ask Yvette a little bit more about the hot topics, then we'll go to another call. Yvette, one of the things that I saw as we move out of the NFL protest is that LeBron James jumped in. I did a video on it, and what I said is LeBron James should stop speaking about politics. From everything from Hillary Clinton to Tamir Rice, he's been wrong. When we look at Tamir Rice, he didn't say anything. This is a boy that was shot down in his community. He said basically nothing and decided to do nothing. The mom of Tamir Rice basically said she was saddened. And then when we look over at when Stephen Curry gets uninvited to the White House, we hear this basically short-sighted comment about Trump being a bum. Now, as much as everybody might dislike Trump, which I can understand, you got to respect the office and the country you live in to some extent. And so, what do you feel about LeBron? And then the last thing is he wants to kind of take protests and make it about unity, which I believe is about selling jerseys again. And I want to know what you feel about what LeBron James, said about Trump, and then how that mixes with his Tamir Rice statements.
Well, the thing is, like, we get confused. Like, as black people, we get very confused. And every time we see a black person protest about something, we automatically assume, oh my God, they're protesting about us. This black person is standing up for us. And so that's what we saw when we saw LeBron James say what he said about Steph Curry going to the White House. But what you should also consider is that these are just two very rich, elitist people supporting each other. And I mean Steph Curry and LeBron James. If LeBron James wanted to be there for African Americans, he could have been there for Tamir Rice. Mm-hmm. But he said he didn't know enough. But he called Trump a bum. Like, you got to understand the language of you. You call him a bum because he said he was disinviting Steph Curry, and Steph Curry had already said he wasn't going to come to the White House.
Which is also the White House. So what Obama did to the presidency for Black America particularly is it made it about an individual rather than an administration and the country for that matter. And I think for a lot of us, we celebrate, because I have my own critique about Obama and the use of celebrity. I did a piece again called Obama and Celebrity, and you can Google that. And what I basically said is Obama masterfully used Jay-Z, Oprah, and a number of other people to make Black America forget that he didn't have no policies for us. And then so Trump just took that and spun it on his head. And so where everybody tries to create an antithesis between Obama and Trump, I see more of a brother relationship in terms of different variations of the same use of celebrity to sell themselves. And so what I'm coming to now is how then can you look at LeBron James in any other light, which is essentially, this is not to be elitist. For you to be where you're at, the amount of expertise it took for you to become the political genius that you are is a lot of work. But nobody in Black America knows how to respect that in the same way they respect LeBron James knows how to play basketball. Me and you ain't gonna go out there and kick no basketball out that man's hand. But somehow we've allowed him the space to come kick the political basketball out of our hands, and in a sense take over a dialogue that he has no business being in. And I'm not saying in a sense he can't be supportive, but that's what you got to do. You got to be supportive. And what that means is you might not get to sell as many jerseys. The one thing I'll say about Cap, and I stand with Cap, I'll say that, is that Cap risked it all. He ain't playing ever again in my mind. Unless, the NFL is something else, it's a beast, it's all about money. But in my mind, he never plays another down. And he threw it all on the table for Black America. I don't see that with LeBron James. I see somebody wavering. We forget that these people have big machines behind them to spin them out of talking about black issues, to talk about everything from DACA to Trump, but not talk about hookworms and lead in the water continuously. We forget that Sean Diddy Combs told us that Trump was his friend. We forget that Serena Williams just in 2015 was at Trump's New Year's Eve ball, and she's been at a lot of Trump events. We forget that Black America played a role in branding Trump in the sense of the video that you brought up with 67 rap songs with Trump's name, basically giving credence to a man who's failed so many times as being a great businessman. But then we somehow want to create the ultimate Skeletor enemy, as we saw with Ta-Nehisi Coates and him, and make him into the evil whiteness man. And I just think it's the wrong approach. What do you think before I bring in another caller?
Well, I do think it's the wrong approach. I think you're right. I think you're so right about the ball being kicked out of our hands, right? I mean, you have people who, we study the data, we read the books, we read the articles, and then somebody like LeBron James can just come back and be like, and say whatever, and what we say don't matter. No, it's about disciplines. I would never go to LeBron James and be like, you don't know how to really do that shot. It don't work right. And if I did do that, people would check me and be like, who are you to check LeBron James? But nobody checks LeBron James when he tries to come into this political sphere and check me. Nobody says that. People say, well, he got money, because that's what we've decided as African Americans. Who you are and what you represent and what you're saying should be decided based on what's in your bank account. That's what we basically say.
I go a step further, even Yvette, and say, what's in your bank account from the NFL, NBA, or Universal Records? Because if somebody came in and had $1 million from corn, I don't think we're gonna listen to him. I don't think we're gonna listen to somebody that comes in and say, I'm just a pig farmer, and my family passed this and this down. We don't have as much as the white pig farmers in our county, but we worth $1 million, and we want to speak on our state. I don't think Black America listens to them. They have been sold on the idea that media figures are the number one spokesperson for Black people. And they don't understand that you need to break these people down to understand who and what they are. And I believe we have an obligation to teach them as well. I try to do that, whether it's Byron Allen, Dr. Dre, Teddy Riley. Shout out to Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow. I've given my copies to Teddy Riley and to Dre. I feel like that's a great beginner primer book on mass incarceration. If you're a Black male, you need to read that book and understand that there's a real issue going on with how African American men are targeted. And so what I want to do is go to break, but Yvette, I want to keep you on because I want to bring in another caller and finish the hot topics. I appreciate you giving me your time today because I think that this show is really going well. Yeah. This is Tone Talks. We back again. We're gonna continue this conversation. Yvette Carnell, you still there with me? Hello? Hold on one second. Let me get her back on the line. But while I'm getting her on the line, let me actually have one of the callers come in and we'll have a discussion with them. Yvette Carnell, you still there with me? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you turn down the actual show in the background so we don't get an echo?
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. And so essentially, I just want you to tell me your name and where you're calling from, and then you can go ahead and give me your question or your statement.
Okay. My name is DJ. I'm calling from Atlanta, another millennial, 33, out here struggling like everybody else, just trying to make it.
Okay. I totally understand where you're coming from. I mean, the reality of where Black wealth is at. What happened in many ways, I'm gonna let you make your point, is that I call it plugs and outlets. They told us that school was an outlet, but it's actually just the plug into an outlet of resources, networks, and relationships and money. And white people are hiding those outlets more and more. So we all went to college and went to these universities. I myself went to UCLA, and we got these expensive outlets. But we don't know. We just holding them now, and now or for that matter, they might even change the rules, like you see it in medicine and law and so many practices where, well, you got an old outlet now. You got to go back to school to get another one with the 4-prong. You got to get the lightning plug, and it's just like well, the iPhone no longer don't have a jack. Well, I went to UCLA and got a jack though. And it's like, no, I got the lightning plug. You got to go back to UCLA and get the extensions lightning plug. You know what I'm saying? And you got to pay $50,000 to get it.
Absolutely.
So go ahead. Let me hear what your question is, if you have one for me, or you can make your statement.
Okay. First off, I want to say big shout out to you, Zoe, and Yvette, of course. I listen to you guys pretty regularly. You're always bringing that great info. And I appreciate what you guys are doing out here, trying to raise community-wide political awareness and get us the data on what's going on out here. The point I want to make is that I share the frustration of the first caller, and probably, I'm sure many other black millennials out here, is when, after listening to you guys, getting the info, and we want to try to spread it with our friends, our families, like, hey, this is good stuff. We need to know about this, so we can organize and actually, move the needle. But what I run into is so many of us, and even family members are stuck on the dream of the dream of Black unity versus the practicality of getting to it. What I mean by that is to say, you hear a lot of people that say, like, oh yeah, they want Black unity, going to come together, going to do something, uplift the community. But then you start talking about how to practically do it, that's when it gets quiet. So an example of this I will put out is how you have so many people talk about, like, okay, let's support Black business, have businesses, and which is great. That's a great thing to do. But the data shows that that's not what is moving the needle, or not what has moved the needle in the past for us. Not business by themselves. The businesses only came about because of government intervention, because the government said, hey, guess what?
Contracts.
You're going to treat contracts. You're going to treat Black people the same as you treat everybody else. You're going to give them a fair shot, and it was enforced. So you have to have that sort of backing in order for your business to go forward. It said that, hey, banks, you're going to start making these loans at reasonable, at fair interest rates, so that Black businesses come in. You're going to be required to make X amount of dollars that that you loan out to Black folks. So you're going to have these policies that say, okay, you will give these home loans to Black people and not cheat them. But if we don't have that, we don't have those vehicles to move forward. The other piece is I run into a lot of millennials and even Gen Xers that are like, hey, they'll listen to me. We'll talk about the data, and it's like, oh yeah, man, this is bad. We need to do something. But at the end of the day, they after hearing all that, they think, okay, either myself, I'm going to be that special Negro, or my kids are going to be those special Negroes.
Yeah,
I mean by that.
You know what's the trip about the point you're making? What you're basically saying is Black folk can't count. And so, like, let's just make it real simple. What you end up with is you'll get somebody who will say to you that I just all I want is, right. And let me list all I want is. All I want is my kids to grow up in a safe neighborhood, in a house that's 4-bedroom, 3-bath, with the kitchen redone. All I want is.
Right.
All I want is to be able to pay for my kids to go to just college. The master's program is on them. All I want is to be able to leave my kids retirement, stocks and bonds.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, all I want is everything that Black folk don't have nationally. And so, like, what has started to happen is we've recreated the narrative on what that costs, because what we just described is $2 million. What we just described is a $2 million that isn't made in a singular lifetime most often. It's dynastic in power. But because of a combination of magazines with hip-hop stars and basketball stars, we started to see visuals of young Black people from urban ghettos that somehow achieved this with no idea of the numbers or the reality of whether that actually happened or was just put in the magazine. And one of the things that we covered even in my documentaries, we covered the whole mantra of Rick Ross. That guy's name is William Roberts. William Lynn Roberts. He was raised by a good mother, hardworking mother. That's an image. He was a correctional officer. That's an image. And so we don't know how much of this is image, as far as you making all of this supposed money from rap versus the reality of that was money for the label. And I say all that just to say, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I just think that you can't get disheartened. You got to keep the push going on. I'm not saying to fight everyone tooth and nail, but you give them the data and then you let the data sit, because eventually they're going to come back to that data. And it might not be while you're around them, but we're coming to a place where no longer will Black America be able to ignore its own social condition. But I'm going to close out because I got to do kind of a close up on the show. I appreciate you calling in. Please keep supporting the show next week and the weeks to follow. And keep calling in and keep pushing the data. You can go to my ToneTalks YouTube if you need to share anything, or also go to my ToneTalks Facebook. I have articles all the time. I just did the one with Bruenig, Black Millionaires Hardly Exist in America. It's on Newsmax.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you. Like I said, I follow you guys, so keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to take your advice. Like I said, just put the info out there and walk away. I've kind of already started doing that just out of frustration. It's like, look, I'm not going to, I can lead you, I guess what's the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I'm like, look, here's water. You decide how thirsty you're going to get before you start drinking.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not our job to make them drink it, but then it's really our job to make sure there's water there.
Right.
As I want to say to everybody that tuned in here on this first show, I appreciate you guys tuning in to get this information, to have this dialogue. I know it's a hard dialogue to have because we haven't been having it. And when I look over at this, I didn't get a chance to get to this in the hot topics, but I got to touch it. When I look at this FBI probe of the NCAA and I look at black coaches like our own Tony Bland that came out of Westchester and what's going on with universities scapegoating young black assistant coaches for the way that universities have actually produced basketball players, I think it's unfair. When you look at Pitino saying, "Oh, I'm out of basketball, but I might go to TV instead," and then you have black coaches facing 80 years in federal prison, we have a problem. And part of the reason we have that problem is that we don't have wealth. So when you don't have wealth, you become victim, prey. And when you don't have wealth, you sit and you wait for white America to give you a chance and an opportunity to do things that often are scandalous, dangerous, and not good for you. And I think that one of the things that I'm starting to see is that black America will have to understand the consequence of being black again, to then move forward to understand how to transform how we as black people are treated. In so many ways, the shocking reality that the data presented, and I'm going to bring it back to the top of the conversation, where it showed that we only have 380,000 black families worth more than $1 million, while white America has 13 million families. It tells us quite the narrative. It tells us quite the narrative about how our dreams might not be based in anything that has a sense of reality, and how we need to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and be honest about what it means to come from a slave, to come from a shoe shineman that shines shoes on a train, what it means to do your family tree or to not have ever done your family tree. And then what we need to do is take that information and start to institute some changes in our own day-to-day practices before we begin to even move to thinking about reparations. I think black America right now is facing catastrophe. I think part of what you see with the NFL, the NBA, and everything else is the reality that we're willing to do almost anything because we don't have much of anything to do. What do I mean? Black people have been playing football for years, and we find out now that CTE causes schizophrenia. How much is money worth? Black people have been playing football and so for those people that don't know, I did a piece called "The War on Black Minds," and what I showed is that 70% of the NFL is black. We got to question a system where we keep playing football despite knowing that it breaks bones and breaks brains. Well, nonetheless, what I want to do as we close out is just again say thank you. Go to ToneTalks on YouTube. Go to ToneTalks and subscribe on Facebook. Let's keep the dialogue going. Come back here at 7 o'clock next week, and what you'll be able to do is get this political education. I'll have Yvette Carnell back on time to time. Thank you again.